They're all set up like-minded people.
Alright. I'll go ahead and get us going as we let the last few people roll into the Zoom. So, welcome to Leading Kansas's weekly meeting. So, who we are. We're Leading Kansas. We're a nonpartisan movement demanding transparency, accountability, and action from our elected officials. Why are we here tonight? To learn from our past events, focus on growth, and look forward to what's next. Why now? Because while our leaders refuse to face us, we proved Kansas will ask the hard questions. And there's more work to be done. I really love that. So, first off, last week's events simply could not have been possible without our amazing volunteers. So hats off to everybody who played a role. For those who don't happen to know the full story, we had two events, a constitutional panel up in Lawrence where we moved out of the city. We took the information to a panel in Lawrence. We received what I would call a fire and brimstone retort on how the Constitution is currently under attack from an amazing panel, and then turned around to host a town hall that had 1,700 people signed up. We had about 1,500 people there, and has still been making waves across the internet. So all of that was because of our amazing volunteer coordinators, our amazing volunteers that showed up, and just honestly the people that showed up and said, what can I do? Just throw me in, coach. Absolutely incredible, and thank you to everybody. With that, obviously we loved what happened, but let's move forward and learn from our past events. So the purpose of the constitutional panel was to create space for real civic dialogue on the rights and responsibilities enshrined in our Constitution. Highlights of that event were expanded Leading Kansas's reach to Lawrence. We were able to connect there with multiple groups who have reached out since and have asked for help and support and how they are going to do some follow-up things there. We focused on constitutional principles as the foundation of an accountable government, and we reinforced our mission to inform, engage, and empower Kansans. Key takeaways from that event: we are not just demanding accountability. We are in fostering informed citizens ready to defend our rights and shape our state's futures. There was a ton of information that was provided that day, a ton of things that was, quite honestly, from my perspective, reassuring to hear that there are people there that know the processes. We're able to say, this is what's going to happen, and this is what's going to happen, and here's what we can do. And that is the information that we need to take and push out, because there are a lot of people that don't know that stuff, yours truly included.
On that note, we did record the panel, and it should be available on our, thank you, Matt. It should be available on our website shortly. We have one of our volunteers that was working on that today, so if you weren't there, like Noah said, lots of good information within that panel. So
Yes.
It's hard to see your slides because it's so light. There's so much light.
And the recording on YouTube has had over 200 views thus far.
Ooh, nice.
we'll get more wood in here.
So, we're going to be sending out a volunteer satisfaction survey for the constitutional panel specifically. Those that attended, those that helped, we want to hear from you guys. What worked? What didn't work? What can we improve? I come from a background where we have these things called sustains and improves. Why? Because we want to highlight this is what worked. We felt like this was good, we wanna lean into that. We also wanna highlight what we need to improve. Constructive criticism is always great to hear from you guys, especially if it's coupled with, hey, here's an issue, here's how we could work around it, or here's how we began to work around it. We need to flesh that out better. Obviously, people that are dealing with the issues, boots on the ground situation, know more. So when this survey comes out, please respond. Your words help us be better.
And I'm just gonna plug this, it actually already did come out. Aaron and Catherine did a phenomenal job getting it out to. Okay, good, it came out, okay, so it's out there, and we'll make sure we circulate it again with the meeting recap. I know I filled it out, so everybody else, fill it out.
I need to look for that.
So yes, please check your emails on that. The Murphy Frost Town Hall. Absolutely incredible. The purpose of that was not just to bring elected officials here to answer, though that was, I would say, monumentous for Wichita. The purpose was to hold elected officials accountable by asking the hard questions our own elected leaders refused to answer. This was an absolutely incredible moment that went national to showcase Kansas leaders are hiding, and the people of Kansas are not going to accept that. The highlights of that featured U.S. Senator Chris Murphy and Representative Maxwell Frost, and modeled real public dialogue on urgent issues affecting Kansas. The fact that it was open, the fact that no questions were screened, the fact that Representative Frost had absolutely no idea what he was walking into is exactly how it should be. Because a leader stands even when it's uncomfortable. They don't need to hide behind pre-approved statements. It demonstrated our ability to bring in leaders willing to show up and answer questions directly. Key takeaways from the events: when our federal representatives wouldn't come, we found leaders who would. We set a new standard for accountability that will keep demanding here at home. We have continued to demand it. We have reached back out to our current leaders, and we have told them, this is unacceptable. The offer still stands. We will work with you to answer questions, especially now as we head into a bill that has been completely shifted in the Senate and now went back to the House, where it's going to once again potentially be shifted with errors in it that they've tried to overlook, and leaders telling us, hey, we promise this is going to happen, while the president pulls funding from areas. Accountability right now is the #1 button. And I don't know if you want to tell your little what you've been getting.
Well, yeah, and I think we're probably going to focus on this later too. But one thing that I've been thinking a lot about as I continue to make calls to our representatives and trying to hold them accountable is that we can disagree about policy all day, right? But we are in a moment, and I think this goes back to leading Kansas's 4 tenets: defending freedoms, protecting institutions, securing Kansas, and championing the truth. We are in a moment where we have a president, and this is not a partisan statement, we have a president that is not enforcing the law as it has been passed, right? We saw just yesterday that he's now withholding, his Department of Education is withholding $7 billion or thereabouts in public school funding for after school programs and things of that nature, right? That is stuff that has been authorized and signed into law, and he's not doing it. So what I have tried to start doing when I'm calling Senator Moran and Senator Marshall, it happened to be Senator Moran's staff that got an earful this morning, is pushing on that, saying, I disagree with your bill on a personal level, but on behalf of my organization leading Kansas, it is very problematic that you are telling me that I should be okay with this bill moving forward. Take, for example, the rural hospital issue, because that's what came up this morning, because Senator Moran got money set aside for rural hospitals. But what confidence do I have that when President Trump decides not to give that money to rural hospitals, Senator Moran is going to stand up and hold him accountable? And I think one thing that I wanted to impress upon you all tonight is to go back to those 4 tenets, because I think right now it is so important to focus on the pro-democracy piece of it, the pro-rule of law piece, because again, if you take a different tack, they're just going to say, oh, we disagree. That's just, who knows, Democrat, they're a liberal, Colin, they don't like this bill, they don't like anything we do. No, that's not it. right? We can disagree on policy, and there's plenty, like we heard on Sunday, a lot of people think there's a lot of bad stuff in this bill, and I don't disagree on a personal level. But again, what it comes down to is holding our leaders accountable for standing up for the laws that have been enacted, the rule of law, accountability, right? And that's the piece that I wanted to emphasize to you all tonight, because one thing that will fragment a movement really quickly is disagreeing on policy. And so I just wanted to reiterate that for Leading Kansas, it really is about those broad tenets that we can all get behind in this moment when our democracy is under such threat. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say,
Okay, sorry, Dawn.
I was just gonna say, also, we have so many leaders who are accepting so many things they disagree with because of certain things that they do agree with. We have to tell our leaders, if you don't agree with any part of this bill, you should not be voting yes for this. Where is your honesty and integrity? If there's one thing that you think is going to be bad for any American citizen, the answer is no.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been able to get a hold of Marshall either by email or on the phone. At best from Moran, I've been able to get some email responses. Thank you for your inquiry. We'll get back to you. And from Estes, the only time I've actually gotten a hold of him on the phone was, one of his office people. As soon as I started talking about things that didn't agree, they hung up. So what is an effective
I'm on a
way?
first name basis with his office worker looking to Alexis. Bill, if you but I'm on first name basis, so.
Just out of curiosity, did anybody get any feedback today or in the last 2 days, 3 days since the town hall from any of these representatives? Because I got 2 packaged responses from Representative Estes that came one right after the other on inquiries or complaints that I had made 4 months ago. But they ironically or coincidentally came through today. So, but to answer your question, I think it's I think we do. You still have to keep calling, right? You still have to keep trying, leave the voicemails. But I think as an organization, that's where our power lies, right? Because there is power in numbers, as we saw on Sunday, and so we have to, whether it's taking the town hall show on the road and doing more of these public events where they are absent. I think that's effective.
So if I may follow up on this thing, we talked about Sunday pulling together all of the questions that didn't maybe get answered, probably all the ones that didn't, and send those to the representatives. Is that still
Hold no account.
Yes, yeah. So I need to get with Josh. He holds the form with all the questions. We're going to pull all of those questions and we're going to send them out. And then we're also going to put them on the webpage itself. Hey, here's what Kansas asked. Because we,
And you're gonna send that to the representatives?
Yes. Send it. I'm gonna ultimately what I want to do is I want to mail it to them. I want to fax it to them, and I want to email it to them. I'm gonna call them and say I've sent you multiple questions. I expect a response. I will say I was on a press call with Marshall this past week before our event. There was 30 different individuals on this call. He took 3 questions. And in one of the questions, it was a very poignant question asked specifically that the non-governmental organizations have identified that X amount of people are going to be cut off of Medicaid. What do you have to say about that? His response was, I don't believe those numbers, those are made up numbers, and move forward. And that's where the accountability comes into play, because it's on 2 sides. Before anything happens, we have to hold them accountable. This is what the experts are saying. This is what we are hearing. Prove them wrong. You say it's made up. Prove that. Provide us evidence. If you can't, don't vote for it. And then if the bill passes, which I pray it does not, if it passes, then the response is, it said this would happen, and now it is happening, and you said it wouldn't. What are you going to do? And that's where we push on accountability, not only accountability there too, but we have to rely and lean on who we are as Kansans. Because ultimately, if something does happen, and I believe it's an estimated around 93,000 people in Kansas that are going to lose health insurance. One, we have to hold our leaders accountable. But 2, it's 93,000 people in Kansas that are going to be hurting. What do we do for them? What can we do for them? And that's where we need to step up and focus.
When we call, does it make sense to identify ourselves as Leading Kansas?
I-
Members of Leading Kansas, I don't know if we should, yeah.
And that's what I was really getting at, Bill, because I think we can't stand up here, you know, we're not a policy organization, right? And so when you're making your calls, I think it's completely appropriate to first voice your concerns on the policy level as a constituent, as an individual, and then say, oh, by the way, I'm also a part of this organization, Leading Kansas. We've been asking for a town hall with the senator or the representative for 100 days now, and we haven't gotten an answer or not a sufficient answer, right?
And from an organizational PR/strategic messaging push, when you call and you email and you write and you say, I'm part of an organization known as Leading Kansas, one, they know who the heck we are, right? Two, it applies so much more pressure because you're now saying, I'm part of a group that is asking this. It's not just me. You are ignoring us. And you can clearly state, and I will put my name on this, you can clearly state, I'm part of Leading Kansas, who is part of a group of coalitions of organizations in Kansas that are demanding answers. Because it's more than just us across the state. So put that in there because we are a part of it. Yes.
So I wish I would have thought of that, but I've been calling Moran about voting against what I call the murder budget, and they passed it anyway, so today I thought, all right, I really don't think Estes is gonna care, but I'll call. And amazingly, a staffer answered the phone. And I was using the 5 Calls app, which has the list of issues that you could potentially say, and it said choose 2 or 3. Well, the top one was that the bill adds X number $1 trillion to the deficit. I thought that would be a good one. So I did that one, and the second one I did is, I don't want you to cut Medicaid because my mother, when she was 80 years old and had Alzheimer's, needed Medicaid to go into a nursing home. I was the one who had to go to the Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Services and fill out the form that said she had less than $2,000. If she hadn't had Medicaid, she would have been on the streets. So I felt good about it because the staffer couldn't really argue with that, and I wasn't trying to tell him all the reasons I hated the bill, but I just told a personal story, and he said he would pass it on.
It's good, especially if you can ground it.
One of the things I've seen on Facebook today is advice to check the wording that Moran used for his defense. And he said he is keeping this from affecting those hospitals immediately.
Yes.
And that doesn't say they aren't gonna affect those hospitals in 2 months. And he needs to be held accountable. He's purposely using language to try to evade what he's done.
And so that's quite frankly, language is it's a game here. When you look at the demand of saying if we don't pass this bill, then there's going to be a tax increase on the middle class. That's just a sunsetting of regulations that they voted on in 2016 or 2017 that was built into the bill. There has been individualized bills pushed forward that would keep those tax cuts going, but they've said no because it hasn't given to the billionaires. And even when you look at no tax on tips, no tax on overtimes, those are now capped at a drastically reduced cost, and they're sunset so that they're not going to be there for more than 3 years. So the entire language of the bill, when we talk about it, is not only is this cutting rural hospitals, not only is this cutting care for people in Kansas, but you can't even give us the thing you promised forever. You can't even give it to us for more than 3 years. You're going to hurt us for generations because you want to help the billionaires, and in 3 years it'll go away. So when you look at the language, that's a good call out, especially how they talk about it and why they're talking about it, because they want to be able to shift the burden to the other side when the fact of the matter is this was a problem set forth and clearly identified in 2017.
So just a comment here. We are essentially fighting big dollars. And we can't match that. But numbers makes a difference. So the bigger we can grow as an organization or group of organizations, whatever it is, that's probably a bigger threat than the dollar because you can't get elected if you don't cut the number.
Yes. And that kind of also speaks to the strategic nature of why in a future slide you'll see pushing out into these other cities and engaging with them. It is, when you look at how you would combat this from a leadership standpoint, is if I can keep it corralled, contained, and in one location, if it's all small groups of individuals talking, that's fine, I can ignore them because they are small individuals. But when there becomes a spread, and there becomes a coalition, and there becomes a unity of messaging across multiple areas and multiple counties and multiple cities of people standing up and saying the same things and identifying, which is why you'll see the billboards that says a real Kansas fed up, that's now being switched to talk about the bill. There are people now pushing that farther west with more billboards being made. There's going to be commercials being ran on public radio about this. All because as long as it's heard here and here and here and here and here, the people in power are going to go, oh crud, they're getting together on the issue, and they're not staying disenfranchised and broken apart. So that is their fear. Yes.
Is anybody asking the question of why they're rushing this? Because they really don't need this done until December. Senator Angus King did a really good recap of what is majorly wrong with this bill, and that was the question that he asked. He said, why are we rushing? I know Trump is saying I need it by July 4th, but I think that's a place that we can push back, because that was the question he kept, why are we hurrying? Why are we rushing? This is a terrible bill. Let's kill it. Let's do it right. We've got until December.
What's the guy's name that founded Indivisible on his life? Ezra. He was on the news this morning explaining the reason they're pushing it is that so few people know what it's in it. And the more people know what's in it, the more people will speak up against it.
And they run
That's
for the budget for ICE, and they need the money
Oh, yeah,
that's in that
that's a
bill
good point, Renee.
to fund it, because they've overspent.
And they want us scared and panicking, so no.
If they capped the tax refunds at $400,000, it would cut 60% of the cost of this bill.
Yes.
Are all three of our senators, representatives, are they up for re-election next November? Just
Marshall.
Marshall, yes.
Well, this is kind of even dumb, but, you know, as we talk, I think, oh, yeah, I need to say that, and then I need to say that, and then I need. Does somebody somewhere in their offices say, no, you've already had your statement today?
Yeah.
So, really, I
You
think
can call us many times as you want. We
Oh.
have many voicemails as you want.
let's close the meeting.
Is everyone getting hung? Yes, sir.
They aren't planning on building anything like Alligator Alcatraz in this state, are they?
So I know Leavenworth. Yeah, Leavenworth has been talked about being retrofitted.
Oh, it's in the works, I think they've already got the money. Where?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of things.
Lawsuits are trying to stop them, but right now the courts aren't doing their jobs.
That prison already.
So the quick answer, yes. And the local people are not happy at all about it.
Okay, so what are we gonna do? Let's
Let's keep going. Well, but I think, you know, just to wrap this piece of it up, messaging really is important, and we're not even gonna be able to talk about the midterms without protecting our institutions first, because the last headline I saw, Noah and I were just talking about it before the meeting, DOJ is now looking for reasons to prosecute election officials at the state and local level. This is real, you guys. We have to protect our elections, we have to protect the rule of law, and as long as lawmakers can, I mean, there is power in numbers, but as long as our lawmakers can brush the vast majority of their constituents that disagree with them off as disagreeing on policies, we can't move the needle. We have got to hold them accountable to our checks and balances, to stand up and do their job as a separate branch that is supposed to be holding the executive accountable. We have to tell them that when the president breaks the law, that's not okay, right? We need to stand up for the integrity of our elections. so that we can live to fight another day on the policy front. So again, the messaging matters here, and so I would encourage you guys to all give some thought to that the next time you make your call. Instead of making it all policy-based, try to work in the institutions and protection of our institutions. Yeah, go ahead, Nelson.
Isn't there part of this bill that gives him the ability to ignore a Supreme Court ruling for a year as well, like ignore like
Oh my
it's like I read
Yeah.
something in there that's
Oh my God.
in there where you can,
There's
yeah.
part of it that
I'm done.
allows us-
He can suspend elections, like,
Um,
yeah, it's so that's a good point.
So, on that note as well, another volunteer has been sent out.
Sunday was great.
Yeah, quite frankly, this was a massive endeavor to pull off. I don't know if you guys have saw the photos of the lines, not only going around the building, but way out there. And credit to everybody that was checking people in and ushering people through. You know, we only had one person that had a complaint, which I think there was something going on there. But other than that, absolutely an incredible event. So if you haven't seen the survey, please take the survey. We'd love to hear from you, especially as we look to how do we do this again for other leaders.
Did they get everybody in?
Everybody that wanted to come in could come in.
Yeah, they just stopped checking.
I know I said it already, but Erin Murrow, you went above and beyond. So can we And I didn't even walk into the lobby after about 10:30. I mean, it just, you guys were amazing. I mean, everything went smoothly.
Everybody worked together, it wasn't
Yeah,
just
it
us.
was amazing. So thank you all, but especially you guys who put in this work.
So besides the Murphy Frost and Bernie and AOC, are there any other legislators who are also going out and doing these town halls? And what is the opportunity to get someone else in here? So they got covered pretty good in the press.
Oh, yeah.
I don't see the press down on Saturday mornings down at Broadway, you know, except on the real major ones, but you know, the day-to-day, you know, the regular weekly ones, the press doesn't show up for that, so.
So this is where we get to engage in what is my favorite thing to do, which is trolling our political leaders. Because we have the opportunity right now to throw this in the face of every leader that said no or was silent. And not just in a, hey, we really would like it for you to come. We had people from outside of this state show up when you wouldn't show up. When are you gonna show up? And especially if we take that video of where are you, Ron?
Yeah.
And everybody shares it, tagging Ron Estes. Ron, where are you? This is unacceptable. If
Share from the leading
Yes.
social media.
share from the leading Kansas, tag Ron Estes, do it weekly. Because there's a reason, and I joke you, I made the comment when Katie said that she got those two things from Estes. Multiple people in the chat in here saying, I also got 2 messages from Estes. So he is 100% scrambling and feeling the pressure. So this is take the video, share the articles, send it to him.
So we
Hey
can
Ron, where were you?
we can get it out of Slack, and we're
So if you go to our Facebook page, there's the video there. I can even send out a link to the video that you guys can download, and just continuously push that. Because I guarantee you, not only from a professional level is he upset at this, from a state level of within the parties, there is upsettingness on both sides of what the heck are outsiders coming to our state making us look like we're not doing anything. Oh, it's because you're not doing anything. So
It's so simple. Come back to your question of the next step of that too is also getting them, our own
Yes.
elected officials,
yes.
to a town hall, right? That's always been the goal. So that's where we're gonna make our big push in the next few weeks. But if they're still not willing, then it's absolutely on the table for us to reach out to somebody else to bring them here. I personally would love to have a Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger or one of these folks with this country over party at a town hall to speak to Kansans about the importance
So.
the foundation of our
I
program.
know your question, I want to follow up on, what all did it take for this, we're only attendees and not involved, what all did it take to pull this off? And what would it take to do it in the
That's the
future?
secret sauce.
If-
Persistence.
Yeah.
Persistence is what it does.
money?
I mean, persistence. I mean, it wasn't like we didn't have a grand plan. It was, we asked, we kept asking, we would send them, media, news articles, when Leading Kansas was in the news, like our May 10th town hall, op-eds, we'd say, hey, guess what? It's been 75 days, Moran still doesn't have an answer, does your guy wanna come? And eventually, Senator Murphy's people said yes. I mean, they worked with us from the jump and kept circling back around, and they said, all right, we're ready to do this.
What does that cost? Who covered their costs? The WSU costs? How does that work?
So we
foot the bill
Yeah.
right now.
we foot the bill for it because of donations from everybody that has given. And thankfully, we're an organization that whatever we get, we push directly back into whatever we have. And so that is both extremely beneficial for how we operate, but it's also extremely beneficial in that when we want to do something, it's because the people have donated for that. And what's great to follow up on your how this gets done is before, as Katie said, it was, hey, we've done this and we've done this and where were you? Now we can turn around and say, this is the demand, where are you? This is what we've done and how many Kansans showed up and the questions they asked, where are you? Hey, we've already done this, where are you? And then we can turn to outside individuals if they continue to remain silent and say, this is what Kansas is needing. Please come help us. So it completely changes our ability. Men?
So, So do we want to broaden our horizons on social media? Because if you just take your video and everybody shares it, we're not reaching people. If you want to seriously help, I need everybody to follow Leading Kansas on all of our social media. It's been up for months. It gets barely anything except for on TikTok. And this is like people who are not even in Kansas that are following us on TikTok. I need help. I'm just sitting here posting 2 or 3 times a week, and then if you're posting the exact same thing, it reaches who you see. But if we can get Leading Kansas to be where everybody goes,
Yes.
we can reach the whole state. So if you don't know about social media and you want to help with that,
Yeah, if you're on,
ask, because I'll show you how to do it. It's not hard, but that's stop just sharing it to your page, copying and pasting. Don't do that. Share from different places.
We can have a geezer workshop for this. I would love to see
that's a wonderful idea.
I think another thing that we could really push right now, because we did have young people at the town hall, is to try and capitalize on that. And maybe in one of our follow-up emails, once we get all the emails added of the registrants, we push that out and say, hey, this is what we really need right now, and make that the focal point of our
It's an easy thing that anybody can do. If you're sick, you can just share.
Yeah.
Put it in my story.
It is, except for, and I'm gonna be devil's advocate here, I don't like sharing things on social media, you know this, I have Facebook
But you don't have
and
to
that's it,
engage,
right?
you just
So-
share it.
Right, but I don't even have the platform, and I'm not that old, and so I can understand the people that just don't wanna be on there, cause it's toxic, I think it's fun.
So that's fine.
But I think
want
we
it,
need, but I
if you
think we
want
need young people, and I think there
That's
were a lot of young people there, I've heard that that's how we need to reach them, is on the social media platform, so we definitely need to push on that.
2 questions. What other like-minded organizations are we potentially liaising with to get our message out there, actively, instead of just kind of waiting for things to pop up? And then my second one is an example. I put a lot of work in with Trust Women to make sure our Constitution didn't change when Roe fell. And I can tell you, Planned Parenthood and Trust Women is a powerhouse. If we can get some of them in on this to help, we did calls, we did postcards, we did, all those damn bumper stickers that were up all over the place downtown, that was me. How do we, how do we get other
We've got a list of, and I know Ryan, this is your first meeting, so you probably wouldn't be privy to this, but we've got a list of about 60, 70, how many are on our outreach, 50, 60?
Yeah, we.
Local orgs that we've been in touch with and are trying to build those relationships. Obviously, there are a couple key players in Wichita, and we also have a list now that's brought to Lawrence because of our constitutional law forum. So we are trying to do that kind of outreach, but if you're interested in picking up that particular piece, please join the outreach subcommittee and help us with that because that is a need that we have right now. As far as the trust women component, we're all aware that there's going to be a ballot measure next August that is extremely important to keeping our courts impartial, and that is the judicial selection process amendment that is coming at us, right, to try and insert politics into our elections. Planned Parenthood is going to play a big role in that push, I know that, and I know that there are a handful of other organizations that are really working on that. That's something that League of Kansas intends to be a part of, because that goes to the foundation, right? Our impartial courts is part of the foundation of our democratic system, and so I don't know if that answers your question, but we will definitely work with them on that issue. Even though that's a little bit more, the issue you were referring to is a little bit more of this policy realm that we're trying to see.
So that brings us to an update. So the city county update, as many of you remember, the city hosted a town hall where they worked, kind of bamboozled everybody, but they wanted us to tell them how to do their jobs of working with the county. We have heard from Ryan Beatty that the first town hall obviously focused on the communication gaps and building trust. There was a ton of feedback, so thank you for everybody that came out that day. Mayor Lily Wu, USD 259 board president Diane Albert and Ryan Beatty were there. They are planning to announce a second town hall date within 7 to 10 days.
Good.
The key considerations for us is how do we engage in this process? Obviously, we were there. We asked questions. There were a lot of good questions asked. How do we engage in that? When we show back up for accountability, how do we be there? Ultimately, they're trying to save money, not lose programs, and make there be efficiencies. But efficiencies can't come at a cost to quality of life. So how do we support, participate, push harder for real commitments? And how do we ensure outcomes don't stall at talk without actions? These are questions to think about as we head into it. When that comes out, hopefully more information will be given, but as it does, please check our socials because we can keep pushing there to keep that accountability.
I think if you could get a group of people that would go to city council meetings and speak on specific issues. I know you've got to sign up in advance and stuff, but I know that Layton, just like the McAdams pool and certain things that have happened, when you push them hard enough, they will make changes. But if people aren't showing up at council meetings and embarrassing them or saying, what they're doing wrong, they tend to ignore you. So I think if you can get people at city council meetings, that would be great, or Sedgwick County, but I think it's the city that's they just are liars, cheaters, and they hide a lot of stuff from us, a lot.
Could you clarify whether this town hall that's up there was a city and a county thing jointly and who initiated it?
Yeah, so
Is that a new thing?
So it initially started as, hey, we want to hear from you guys. The city, the county, and the board, the school board are all coming together. Come talk about what you see, what you feel needs done. 2 days prior to the meeting, they changed it to, you're going to tell us how we should work together with with all of them. So the city, the county, and the school board were there, and we were supposed to tell them, well, hey, how about if you guys did this to save money and consolidated here or work together here, which is a kind of a ridiculous question to ask because you should know the system better than I do. That's what their job is. But that was part of the feedback that we gave them. And to be fair to Commissioner Ryan Beatty, he fully understood, fully agreed. So him and I have had a lot of good conversations after this. And so the next one is supposed to be, now that the city and the county and the school board have heard from us, gotten a lot of good ideas, They were supposed to go back, kind of flesh out those ideas, see if some of them were possible, if they were cost saving, if they were efficient, if they were not worth it, and then come back and say, hey, here's what we learned, how we can do, here's some efficiencies, what do we think?
So is the us leading Kansas, or were they going just, we need the public?
It was the public, leading Kansas was probably 50% of the people in the room, so.
I was just gonna say, the Board of Education is up for election in August. We need to do some sort of voting thing with people, because that's something that a lot of people don't pay attention to unless they have a specific reason they want a Board of Education person. And as a teacher who works for Wichita, now there's who's on the board.
I don't mean to be Debbie Downer, but to me, after this last few days with the budget thing, I feel like that they've made up their minds. Now, maybe it won't go through, but if it does, it's kind of all over. Our job description needs to change. Because
The federal budget.
well, yeah, because Estes and Moran and what's his name, Marshall, they've all voted. They want this budget to pass.
No, not
They
yet.
want this big, beautiful bill to pass. They voted for it.
It's not a done deal yet.
I know, but I'm just saying that they've made their views clear. No matter what we've said and protested, they've made their views clear. So if it does pass, then what are our options? Because they want it to happen. Do we we come forth with better candidates and try to get rid of them then?
So-
I'd say it makes it even more important that we defend the pillars of our democracy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well said.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if it does pass, we still champion the truth. Hey, this is what we were told, this is what happened. This is what we knew, this is what you said. We defend we protect our institutions from cuts that happen. And quite frankly, honestly, we have to start looking at how do we then shift to help. We really have to take the leading Kansas and securing Kansas part of our name as if rural hospitals close, yeah, we can go there and say, this is exactly what we said was gonna happen. This is hold them accountable, and that's great, but at the end of the day, who's suffering? Kansas.
That's
So-
why we need to be more aware of all of our House representatives, not just Ron Estes.
Yes.
Because we know how he's going to vote, but we don't know the other ones. They could be on the fence and we don't know. Ron could be on the fence and we don't know. We are not inside some of these races. And so that's why we need to be like spreading this information out to everybody across the state so that they can also be doing it.
Say five also got a list of representatives that could be on the fence that, no matter what state you're from, go ahead and call them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of broadening our reach and seeking out other representatives, one thought that I did have was going to Manhattan and holding an event and trying to get Tracy Mann there. He's not our rep, but League of Kansas could still host an event, they still host a town hall for him. I don't know if he'd be any more reasonable and willing to talk to his constituents, but I think the point is, whether it's before or after, whatever happens with this bill, they have to answer questions.
Yes.
They have to, we have to continue to hold them accountable for their decisions. And more importantly, their constituents have to know that they knew this before they voted for it, right? And so we need to educate people because a lot of times that information is simply not getting to them. They're in their own echo chambers and they have no idea
And
what is really going on in Washington.
And as we gear up for if this does pass, one of the main tenets of what we started this was having an understanding and a broad reach to organizations that are already doing good work. Because when we go into these areas and they say, hey, we have this many kids that were focused on school lunches and now they're gonna go hungry, we don't know what to do. Do we as Leading Kansas have the exact answer on how to fix that? No. Is there organizations that are currently working that could help with that? Yes. What can we do? We can connect. We can connect them and say, these are great people. They'll help you. And if we can help them in that connection, let us know. And that's how we can be. So when we look at the outreach, when we look at the organizations that are already doing things, it's important we start really pushing into that outreach side of things, of connecting to groups that are doing things. Because realistically, in the next year, the landscape, both economically and sociologically, within Kansas is going to drastically shift. So reaching out to those individuals now and saying, what do you hear? What are you expecting? How do we start helping you with the groundwork? It's going to be key.
We just want to say, there may be a very small group of people that are not comfortable with only reaching out through social media and the internet, but there's also a very viable small group of people out there who need to be reached, who are not reached through those channels. Don't forget about postcards and mailers. I talked to a friend in Vermont today who was writing postcards for a certain judge in Pennsylvania and, sending them out with her list. And that's all important too, because there is a group of us that are not involved in the internet.
Now that we're
But are very reliable voters.
Yes.
That are very
and now that
and poll workers and all the rest of it.
now that we're kind of reaching that zone of there is about to be a monumental shift, we as an organization can look at those areas and say, hey, if this passes, we know that this hospital is going to shut down, or we know that there are this many people within that area that are going to be affected. We have the capabilities to do a mail campaign to those areas and say, the bill has passed, this is what is expected, this is what you need to know, and reach those people right on their doorsteps easily. So we can look at that as we start looking at messaging and start looking at implications of this bill, which we can get into here in a second. Yes.
So I was particularly moved by the young lady who spoke with all the Generation Z, whatever, Gen. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
She did a fabulous job setting all that up and, setting up the ambush for the kids. How do we as an organization link better and get a real good relationship with those folks that where we go, they go? How can they get people to show up at Douglas and Kellogg, or not Kellogg, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So we really need to work that relationship hard. Anything I can do to help, groundwork, whatever, I'm willing to do. I think that's kind of really, really important.
So this is a harsh truth in that the younger generation feels as though the problems of the current situation is dealt to them. And that any time that they've tried to step up, when there's been gun violence, when there's been racial inequality, one, they're looked down on from a political aspect because why should they vote? Their vote doesn't matter. And also they feel like they now have to fix things that they didn't do because people decided to let things go crazy. And it's an uncomfortable truth that we have to grapple with and deal with, because when we talk to them, a lot of them say, well, why do I have to do that? You guys screwed it up and then now I have to show up. And then when we also look at them, when we talk about, hey, if Medicaid gets cut, this is gonna hurt these people, they're already struggling to find a home. They're already struggling to pay for health insurance. They're already struggling to pay for food. They've been saying that for a long time. So a lot of them feel like their voices aren't heard. So what we need to do when we reach out to them is, and this has been from multiple people that we've been talking to and multiple people I've been talking to in other groups, some in Manhattan, some in Lawrence when I talk to the college people there, how do we reach to them, is they don't want the same things that we want. Not necessarily. They're more concerned about different things and we're not talking about it. And when we do try to talk to them, we try to say, hey, show up because they're gonna cut Medicaid. Okay, well, they're more concerned about the fact that there's tyranny and they're seeing peaceful protesters get tear gassed. And why aren't we talking about that? And why aren't we talking about what they want to talk about? And so there's a conversation that has to happen. This isn't Noah saying this is what we got to do, because I don't know. But the dialogue has to start with, your voice matters. You matter. What can we do to help you? And that's a conversation that has to happen. We've engaged with the WSU, some of the youth organizations on there to start that conversation. And I encourage you to do that when you're at protests and you see younger people. Hey, what's something that matters to you? I want to talk to you about it. Tell me organizations. Be involved in those things when you see these events pop up. The fact that LGBTQ parade happened, Pride happened. How many went? How many were supportive? Are you just as supportive for those rights as you are for the other rights? We know that there's a large push within a younger generation when it comes to Israel and what's going on in Gaza. Are you engaging in that conversation? Are you educating yourself in that? I will say, as somebody who's not in that younger generation, but not in an older generation, I'm trying to figure out how to engage in both. How am I educated on what it's like to be somebody who's worked their entire life and retired and thinks this is it, and all of a sudden healthcare is slashed and their retirement funds are drained, and they've got to figure out what I don't understand that, but I also don't understand the younger generation. And a lot of what needs to happen is just taking a step back and saying, what's important to you? Because you're important to me. If it's important to you, educate me so that I can be there for you.
Real quick, I want to comment on your, just make one last comment. Jonalyn Marshall is the woman you're referring to with Root the Power, and she has obviously a lot of young people in that organization. But she herself, if she looks very young, she's probably about my age. So she's not super young, but she's fabulous. But the other thing that I will say is when you're talking about how do we get them out to the protests, we cannot expect our Black and brown brothers and sisters to be out there on the front lines of this fight. First of all, the majority of white people got us into this mess with electing this joker president, and so a lot of the burden falls on us. They are much more vulnerable in the current environment than some of us in this room are, and I think we have to acknowledge that. Do we want them there? Absolutely. Will we do everything to get our community partners engaged and they're with us on the front line? Yes, but we cannot expect them to fight these battles in this time.
And we have to be willing to put ourselves in danger if we want them there. We have to be the ones protecting them.
Yeah.
Being the ones that are you're not getting at them. Because it's been, I don't know if it's been proven, but to me, what I see between the things that are happening now and things that happen with Black Lives Matter and stuff like that is, police go to them. They do it on purpose. They try to hurt them. And so they don't usually do that to white people as much. And so we have to be willing to say, I will protect you, and no, she's with me, you're not gonna touch her, go away.
One of the things I think that has been lost in this country in my lifetime is a sense of community. Now, I'm 65 years old, and I remember John F. Kennedy's "Don't ask what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." We've lost that. I think maybe you could add a tenet to this leading Kansas. Be part of this. You're not on the periphery, you're not on the outside. We are all in this together, now more than ever. And we need to bring people with a sense of community. I know that's been said, but I think that's the key. We need to have a community again. We're not a community.
Well, we've got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. We've got to be comfortable with going to an event that we know nothing about, but we know that it deserves support. And we've got to be comfortable saying, I don't understand this topic. I don't understand your position. I don't understand why this matters so much to you. Can you educate me? We have to be comfortable with saying, I am ignorant on this subject. Please teach me. And I might say the wrong words, and I'm sorry. I'm learning. And I might not put it the right way, or I might have the wrong idea. But I don't know, but I'm trying to be better. And you'll be surprised with how many more people are open to you being there. You don't have to understand why this event is happening in the Hispanic community in Wichita to go and celebrate and be a part of it. But knowing that, just showing up and learning someone's name. How was your day? That's great. Hope to see you another time.
You gotta give them jobs to do when they come.
Yeah.
You can't just have them come and listen and then leave them sitting, because they need to know that they're a part of it.
Yes.
So that takes a lot more planning. You've gotta have plans. Like,
okay, this thing on Sunday worked so well because there was a list, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And people could, I could do that, I could do that. You've got to have projects, not just telephone. But you gotta have projects, and when people come to a meeting, it's been proven, it's best if you send them away with a project.
And that means some things that are not focused on politics.
Yes.
If we want a community, we're having potlucks, we're having family game nights, we're doing things that create the community. People aren't gonna engage in politics if they don't feel safe enough with people's people.
Yeah. Fully
You can't
agree.
have revolution without music and dance.
On that note, we have considered we have Valerie suggested something a couple weeks ago, months ago, I don't know when it was now. Having a music event. Music does unite. Music brings people together, and my idea was we could call it the sound of silence because our lawmakers are. But I think that's something that we need to consider because you're right, building community is such a big piece of it.
Yes.
And I think we need to, how do I want to say this? We need to let people know we don't understand the Black community. We don't understand the Hispanic community. That, yeah, I'm listening to you, but you don't hear me. You know, or you hear me, but you're not listening.
Yeah.
And that's the big frustration with people of color and minorities and gay.
Yeah.
You don't understand. You can sit here and we can mix, but you don't get it because you already have the answer in your head, you think. You're not part of this community.
Yeah.
So
Because it takes, that's why you gotta have that uncomfortable conversation with yourself.
yes.
You have to do that. I have predisposed ideas.
Yeah.
I have already made up my mind on certain subjects. And I could be wrong on them because I've been sheltered. I'm a white male that's grew up in the country and then was a military guy where everybody was just absolutely awful to each other. So that framed my mindset of how I deal with people. So I walk into a situation and I will say and do something that is not what is conducive to the environment and can be absolutely, utterly rude to somebody. And needing to have that internal dialogue and understanding of, hey, I'm wrong. That's fine. That's fine. Let's work on me. Let's be better because, as my grandfather used to say, everybody messes up. Like, just get over it. You know, you learn and grow. Civic demand for answers, we're over 800. I've got a whole bunch in there that I need to manually add, so I'm going to probably have to update this number probably closer over to 900. Keep spreading it. This is something we can just keep pushing throughout the summer. We'll keep it going, especially as we head into the Supreme Court side of things. But what's next? We've kind of been talking about that throughout the night. But we need to keep pushing for accountability at every level. Consistently call. One of the things that was brought up on at the constitutional crossroad was sometimes it feels like it's water on stone, right? And sometimes it does. And other times you get in and you galvanize somebody. Sometimes you get a letter sent to them and you finally get a response after 4 months, but that only happened because he felt pressure. So keep it up. Keep that accountability up. Remember our mission and our guiding tenets, just as Katie said. We got to continue to focus on them. Continue to focus on championing the truth, protecting institutions, especially as we head into this bill. Statewide strategy, as we look at where we're going in the next year. What is next? Growth. We've reached out to Lawrence. We've got to continue reaching out. So I implore you, everybody has their own network of individuals. Everybody has their own groups that they are a part of, that has groups that they are attached to. This is where you are the ambassador for Leading Kansas. If you know something that's going on in an organization and it is worthwhile, that fits within our parameters of the 4 tenets, bring it up. This is not a Katie and Noah dictate strategy, move forward. This is a collective organization of individuals that are, quite honestly, in the past few months, we're kicking butt. So, if you see something that's happening, people that are registering people to vote, people that are pushing on certain things, hospitals or rural hospitals or organizations or cities that are dealing with something, bring it up. Because at absolute minimum, there are people here that will say, I want to be a part of that. Let me get in on it. And then that's how Leading Kansas grows. Not through just us doing things and us meeting on Wednesday, but through all of us reaching out and saying, hey, I'm part of an organization called Leading Kansas. I've heard about what you guys are doing. Can I get some more information? I wanted to bring it up. That's critical. And then the event in Manhattan.
Yeah, on the note of statewide strategy altogether, one thing that I think we want to do in the coming weeks that we're going to need everybody's help on is really solidify our subcommittees and our subcommittee leads. Right now, those subcommittees were set up 3 months ago when we got our start, and we've been doing a lot, right? We want to recircle back around to those so that, to Burnette's point, we have more people to give more people jobs to be doing the work, right? And it's hard, because there is a lot going on, but a lot of people have jumped into the fold since then, and so we want to give everybody an opportunity to join those subcommittees where they feel like their strengths lie, and hopefully have some people rise from the top and take leadership over those subcommittees. Yes?
Could we have a list? Could we circulate the old list of subcommittees and what, because they've changed.
They have changed.
Like the poster committee all of a sudden is doing media, social media and that sort of thing. We may need to shift. It's hard to know where to shift.
Well, and people may be, who initially volunteer for things may no longer be interested. I mean, I think we have some holes in our outreach team. Ryan, I'm looking at you. And for fundraising, I know Josh isn't here tonight, but at one point he took the lead on that, and I know he probably will have some more people on his team. So, we can, Noah and I can get together and try and figure out where all that.
And the list that we send out, quite frankly, there are people that have skill sets that they might just say, hey, I have a skill set in this, but also you haven't thought about this. This needs to be something. Fundraising was something we didn't initially think about, which, as a nonprofit, is probably a weakness of us. But that, when we send this out, if you look at that and say, hey, this is wonderful, but I know that we're going to have and I want to be a part of it. This is, at its core, a community organization. And the community is only as strong as the people that are willing to step up and step into roles. And the more people willing to step up is how we execute something like the town hall. That brings us up to a national level. So I would implore you to take a look at that, because as I said previously, the economic and socioeconomic situation in Kansas is going to drastically change in the next 365 days. We have an opportunity to be a guiding force with it.
In the statewide strategy, please be sure to include Hayes, Dodge City, Garden City. They have community colleges there, and that's where you have a lot of people who are probably on the fence thinking, man, what did I do? How do I do this?
I know we're out of time, but I really would like, maybe we can stay after and pick your brain about this, but I would love to hear people's thoughts on the best statewide strategy approach as we try, the founders try and formulate that plan. So if you have ideas, I mean, in my mind, I've sort of thought about it regionally, like does it make sense to have an east and west and a south central, or like you said, or should we be doing it more by city satellite routes in the different cities? There are a number of different ways to do it, but I would love more feedback on that if folks have it. So, yes.
And on Saturdays, I know I've heard from people who come from out west,
Yep.
came to Wichita, they didn't have anything going on in their town. They came here to protest, which I thought was pretty encouraging. They make a 30, 48 mile drive to do that. So.
Yeah.
I agree in the short term, we need to push our legislators for accountability, and this bill is really important, and we need to try and get it stopped. But if we don't, we need to look ahead too, and if they ignore us, and if they vote the wrong way, we need to be starting to think about identifying candidates for next year, and that's something that I think we should do. One way to put pressure on them, Trump tells all the Republicans, if you don't vote my way, I'm gonna primary you. Well, by God, I write them and I say, if you do vote for this, I'm gonna primary you.
Hey, you are throwing money out there.
There's no way they would do that.
So you're right. Unfortunately, as 501c4, we are not the organization that's going to take hard stances on individual candidates. So I have to give that some serious thought, but I think you're absolutely right. Accountability about, finding somebody else to run against them if they're not doing what their constituents want. Yeah.
There might be a way to list candidates just, these following candidates are among those that support our candidates.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, there
Absolutely.
might be a way to do that.
Yes.
Specific parties.
Well, we've kind of been all over the place tonight. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Before you leave, Jan, please tell everybody about your.
I'm Jan Spencer. Are there any artists in the room, musicians, poets, dancers, painters? I have a lot of connections with the arts community, and I've also been an organizer for 10 years or more here. I'm holding an event at my house a week from tonight, 6 to 8. I live at North Riverside. I have flyers about it, but I have a pile of library books that I checked out that have to do with resistance and protest movements, particularly as it relates to art and the role of art. So I just wanted to share those with people because they encourage me so much that I decided to have this event called A Artist Learn In, and it's going to be professionally facilitated by Laura Duncan, who's founder of the Seed House, who's founded a lot of organizations. So if you're interested, I have some flyers, and I'm Jan, so I'd love to meet you. What's your address?
One last thing, Min, I just saw your message. Do you want to make an announcement about it? I haven't read the article. Go ahead. This is sort of breaking news that's absolutely horrific. Okay.
Okay, she alerted me, I'm so sorry, I don't hear you. She alerted me that one of Representative Estes' interns was shot and killed on Monday night. And so are we okay sending out a condolence thing?
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
it happened in DC.
Yeah.
It was a terrorist thing, but he was not the target, he was a unit.
Okay.
Either way, but yes, absolutely horrible, yes, thank you for sharing that.
Very, very young.
Yes, he was 21 from
Support of gun laws.
On a closing note, I know not everybody went to the Constitutional Law Forum in Lawrence, but former Governor Kathleen Sebelius was in attendance.